Adolfo Costanzo, the cult leader, and the Los Narcosatánicos. On Tuesday, the officials found the bodies of 12 people, including a 12-year-old university student of Texas who had vanished here a month ago, in 8 crude graves on the ranch. Today, at the news conferences here in Brownsville, Texas, the officials said that a drug gang, seeing human sacrifice as a magical shield that would protect him from the police, was responsible for the murders. This was written on the New York Times on April 13th, 1989, regarding a hideous crime that would unravel a horrific story about a cultist leader and his girlfriend, a dark and brutal underground business, and their followers that religiously worshipped their foul deeds. Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, or El Padrino, as he was called by his fellows, was born in Miami, Florida on the 1st of November, 1962, to an immigrant mother from Cuba. Constanzo was born when his mother was only 15 years of age, and she went on to have 2 more children, all with different fathers. After her first husband, which was Constanzo's father, died, she moved to San Juan in Puerto Rico. Adolfo was baptized as Catholic, but even though he served as an altar boy in the church, at the same time, he used to follow his mother to trips in Haiti, where they were taught about voodoo. It was at those trips where Constanzo first came in contact with ritualistic practices, and he was fascinated. When Constanzo turned 10 years old, the family moved back to Miami. There, he started apprenticing with a local sorcerer and practiced rituals of a religion called Palo Mayombe. Palo Mayombe, also called Los Reglos de Congo, was developed in Cuba, where Constanzo's mother was from. The religion itself has its root in the Congo Basin in Central Africa, which was the place where many slaves were brought to Cuba. As a result, the liturgical language is a mix of Spanish and Bantu languages. The main attributes of this pagan religion are the veneration of spirits and the strong belief in natural powers. Basically, practitioners of the religion believe that every natural object, especially sticks, have spiritual powers. The main tool in the practices is Lanana, also called El Cadiro, which is an altar that serves as a microcosm. Its physical manifestation is a cast iron cauldron. Each of those altars is believed to be inhabited, usually by one of the Mpungu. The Mpungu are the main spirits of worship in the religion, and are the deities of great power. Other times, the item is thought to be inhabited by a dead ancestor's spirit. It is known that animal sacrifices are strongly linked to the practices of Palo Mayombe, but there are known cases where the religion has been accused for the possession of human remnants, as well as exotic animal bones, and even a troublesome case in Venezuela, when a graveyard robbery created suspicions regarding the involvement of human parts, playing a role in the worship. When a graveyard robbery created suspicions regarding the involvement of human parts playing a role in the worship. Palo Mayombe doesn't draw a line between white and black magic, leaving the practitioner to choose what is better for his own belief. It so happened then that Adolfo's new stepfather was heavily involved in the religion, as well as drug dealing. It is possible that the accumulation of those conditions was what led Constanzo to indulge in a life of violence and crime. He managed to complete high school, but was expelled from the prep school. Meanwhile, he and his mother were arrested in various occasions for minor crimes, such as theft and shoplifting. However, she never really went through real punishment for her crimes, and she attributed this to the magical protection, guarding her through her spells. Even though he had stopped his education, Adolfo was progressing in witchcraft with his mentor. By 1983, he had chosen his own patron saint, called Kadipembe, who is Palo Mayombe's version of the devil. Doing so, Constanzo devoted himself to evil rituals to get profit. He was heavily influenced by his stern stepfather who quoted, "Let the non-believers kill themselves with drugs. We will profit from their foolishness." His initiation included having his mentor scar his flesh, carving mystical symbols on it with a knife. "My soul is dead, and I have no God," he proclaimed. Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo was ready to lead. In adulthood, Constanzo moved to Mexico City and met the first men that would become his followers and colleagues. Their names were Martin Quintada, Jorge Montes, and Omar Oria. He seduced Quintada and Oria, drew them in a weird sexual trio, and he would go on to call one his woman and his other his man, and vice versa, depending on his erotic whim of the moment. Together, they started a very profitable business of casting good luck spells, mainly targeted at superstitious drug lords who wanted to increase their chances of having their shipments delivered intact. The displays of magic were very brutal and involved the sacrifices of animals such as chickens, goats, snakes, zebras, and sometimes even lion cubs. The clients seemed to enjoy the brutality and preferred Constanzo over the other sorcerers, as his demonstrations and shows were highly amusing to them. The news spread, and soon, Constanzo's business opened the gates for him to members of the high society in Mexico, who also wanted protective spells cast from him. Some corrupted cops were also charmed by his shows and showed him the way to the country's biggest cartels. They worshipped him as a deity, the true ambassador of hell itself. The members of the cult were calling themselves the Narcosatánicos. At the same time, he was also developing his own idea of Palo Mayombe. He and his cult's members were raiding graveyards in order to acquire human bones to put in the Ngangas. Soon, he assumed that the spirits of the Nganga would be stronger if he used living people as sacrifices, rather than just old bones. At this moment, the cult was growing very large, and Constanzo was considered the high priest. It was then when the killing spree of the Narcosatánicos commenced. 23 murders in total have been linked to the cult, but the authorities estimate that the true number of victims should be much higher. He showed how important his religion was to him and the cult, as he placed a very strict ban about the usage of drugs between the cult members, as taught by his stepfather. He considered drug addiction to be for the weak-minded, and didn't want him or his followers' vision clouded by drug abuse. He even offered an ex-cop and fellow cultist as a living sacrifice to Kadium Pembe, when he broke the cult's law and used some of the goods for trade. He was absolutely convinced about the success of his spells, and as a result, he demanded to become a full-time partner of one of the biggest narcotics cartel families, the Calzadas. The family refused, and soon after, some members went missing. Their bodies were later found with missing fingers, toes, ears, genitals, and even in one case, part of the spine. He then got friendly with another group of big cartel bosses, the Hernandez brothers. It is possible that they initially decided to do business with him because of fear of their own fate, but later, they actually actively participated in the rituals themselves. Around this time, he met a young woman who would become his girlfriend. Her name was Sara Aldrit. Sara was a very prominent woman, both mentally and physically. Standing 6 foot, 1 inches tall, she was much taller than the average woman, and her characteristics made her very attractive to men. She was a PE student at the time, and was doing 2 jobs to cope with living expenses, as well as her tuition fee. She met Adolfo in a situation that looked like a barely avoided traffic accident. She was dating Gilberto Sosa, an employee of the Hernandez brothers at the time. It turned out that Constanzo had carefully staged the scene for these two to meet. As he noticed her while taking a very close look at her boyfriend's trading activity, she was immediately charmed by his manners and looks. Around 3 weeks later, and after having met Constanzo, who prominently refused to shake his hand, Sarah's boyfriend received an anonymous call, informing him that she was sleeping with another man. Constanzo didn't have any sexual relationship with her yet. He refused to listen to her denials and broke the relationship. Sara found consolation in the arms of Adolfo, who told her that he had foreseen the breakup by his tarot cards, further convincing her for his magical abilities. Their friendship developed in a short sexual relationship, as Constanzo quickly informed Sara about his sexual preferences for men. However, he valued her greatly, and the two stayed as a couple. She reluctantly accepted the lack of sex as she was very hooked up to the new religion he introduced her to. It was basically Sara who led Adolfo to the deal with the Hernandez brothers, as she became his connection to them. Her classmates noticed a huge change in Sara, seeing her become an expert in witchcraft overnight, and being so eager to talk about her new beliefs. Back in the cult, Adolfo called her La Madrina, or the godmother of the cult. She proved her faithfulness and skills by virtually running the organization herself, as long as her boyfriend was over the border selling marijuana. She was treated as a high priestess of the cult, handling deals and practicing rituals. In 1988, Constanzo moved to a ranch house in the desert, where he continued his vile work with even more sadistic murders, killing random people or rival drug dealers. The demons he served apparently demanded blood and fear, and then they would be more prone to help their worshippers, as El Padrino called it. They must die screaming. One of the last sacrifices offered was Sara's old boyfriend, Gilberto Sosa. In order to secure a huge drug trade deal of $800,000 across the border, reportedly, he died screaming in great agony, satisfying Constanzo's bloodlust. On March 13th, 1989, the cult became the culprit of a crime that would ultimately bring their downfall. Mark Kilroy was an American pre-med student that was in Mexico for holidays during the spring break. He was abducted by two of the cult members and brought to Constanzo. It turns out that he was seeking a superior brain for his rituals. Mexican police were under a lot of pressure from Texas politicians, since a U.S. citizen, who happened to have some strong connections through his family, had gone missing. The periodic police anti-drug campaigns to fight against the epidemic were set up so only low-ranking smugglers would be caught, leaving the drug lords free to continue their trade. Such a small-time smuggler was Sarafine Hernandez Garcia, who obviously passed through a police checkpoint without stopping. The police pursued him, and he didn't stop until he reached a nearby ranch. When the authorities reached there, they found occult paraphernalia and marijuana. The police returned later, and upon his arrest, it became clear how deeply the cult members believed in the spiritual powers of their leader. Sarafine remained calm throughout the process, stating that he wouldn't be kept a prisoner for long, as he was protected by a power higher than man's law. He openly admitted participating in Mark Kilroy's murder, explaining that his sacrifice was bringing protection for drug deals. Constanzo's house in the desert was raided, as Sarafine led the authorities to the place, and inside, the police found a dead black cat, a human skull, and 15 mutilated corpses, all male, including Kilroy's, who had been killed with a machete chop on the back of the neck while trying to escape. In a nearby shed, they found the Nagaga brimming with blood, animal remains, and sticks. Mark's brain was floating in the blood, surrounded by other unidentifiable objects. The evidence also showed that Constanzo had added to his sadistic tortures, as he was sodomizing all his victims before killing them. Of course, this wasn't part of the ritualistic process, but rather an added free pass bonus for playing God and convincing people that one's actions are divine and God-inspired. Adolfo was stunned by the attention to the matter, something that he had not foreseen in his predictions. Most of his victims were never identified, or many times even searched for. He fled with 4 other followers, including Sara Aldrit, and he was hiding in an apartment in Mexico City. He went into a rampage when he saw in the news that his ranch was being burned down and then purified with holy water. He acted like he was possessed. Reportedly, he was getting more and more nervous and paranoid, threatening the 4 roommates, including Sara, to kill them. He had read treason in his tarot cards and didn't trust anyone anymore. A desperate Sara threw a note on a piece of paper, asking for people to call the police to the place, saying she was being kept hostage. The note was found by a passerby, who thought it was an elaborate farce and ignored it. Unfortunately for Constanzo, the police were called, due to a research for a missing child taking place nearby, which was completely unrelated to his doings. He thought they were discovered and opened fire with a machine gun, bringing the attention to him. The police called for reinforcements, and soon, the place was surrounded. Refusing to surrender, he gave the gun to a follower named Alvaro de Leon, and ordered him to shoot him and Quintana. Alvaro and Sara were arrested when the police entered the apartment. 14 members of the cult were charged with all kinds of crimes against the law, from drug dealing and murder to obstructing the course of justice. Sara and 2 of the Hernandez brothers, Elio and Sarafine, were found guilty of numerous murders and were sentenced to over 60 years of prison each. Alvaro once more showed the blind faith that the Narcosatánicos had in Constanzo and his power over the afterlife. When interrogated, he promptly said that El Padrino wouldn't remain dead for long. Many of the cultists were caught and persecuted for their vicious crimes. Seemingly the cult was done for. However, there are still many cult-related unsolved cases. 47 murder cases, 14 amongst them being infant children, have been reported. Prosecutor Guillermo Ibarra told the press that it would be easy to throw blame for all of these murders at Adolfo Constanzo and his deranged cult. However, it is a fact that he wasn't the culprit of all those hideous cult-related crimes, and somebody else was responsible. Someone who is still out there. I will leave a link to an original video that was uploaded. It is in Spanish though. Thank you for watching. Thanks for watching, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your story, my email and subreddit will be in the description below. And also, if you're not subscribed, please do if you want. And don't forget to like and comment as well. Have beautiful nightmares. And I will see you next time.